What's up with water? Why is water such a strange thing? And there is much that is strange about water. Water is something that is necessary for human life. We can't function without it. We can survive maybe a day or two under fairly extreme circumstances without it, but go without water for more than that and we'll risk severe damage to our bodies. And yet, despite our necessity, our reliance upon water, it has nearly no nutritional value. It doesn't have any calories or carbohydrates or proteins or fats. It lacks all of the basic things that we might otherwise say that we need. So why is water so essential? Scientists have long examined water, and they've found, differing scientists will name more or less, but around 40 different what they call anomalous properties of water. Ways in which water behaves differently than a lot of the other liquids that we observe around us in the natural world. So for example, one anomalous property of water is that it appears in our world, we see it often in all three of its states. We see it as a solid, ice, we see it as a liquid, water, and we see it as a gas and steam. It's one of the only things that we frequently see in all of those stages. You know, we might see aluminum as a solid. If it gets very, very hot, we might observe it as a liquid melted down. But we never see it as a gas. We don't ever get temperatures that are that high. So it is with most other things in this world. And scientists have often theorized that it's these anomalous properties, it's these ways in which water acts differently from all of the other liquids around us that make it so essential for life. It's one of the great sort of mysteries that still exists in our world today. I think that's why our Lord chooses water so often. Water is the means of healing. Water is the means of bringing people into new life with Him. So we see in our gospel today how Jesus heals this man. How Jesus heals this man who's been desperate to go into this water that needs to be stirred, it needs to be mixed together before he can go in. But as soon as it's mixed up, somebody jumps in before him because he's lame, he can't get into the pool. And so it is that our Lord comes to heal him. And then we hear in our first reading another story about water. This time water flowing out of a flooded temple. The temple is flooded and the waters are rising. As Ezekiel is receiving this vision, he sees the water come up to his knees, then his waist, then finally almost high that he can't even breathe. And this water, as it grows, it begins to flow out of the east side of the temple. It flows from the side, and Ezekiel sees that wherever this water flows, it brings life to all the things that are there. All of a sudden, these plants start to grow up even in the midst of sort of the arid desert sand. What are we to make of this prophecy? Well, the church fathers and the church as a whole is consistently seen in this a prophecy of the side of Christ from which water and blood flowed. And we can see this through a number of different ways. First of all, Jesus, when he chases all of the people out of the temple, all of the money changers and those who are selling, doves and pigeons and sacrifices of all kinds, he says to them, he says, destroy this temple and in 3 days I will raise it up again. They say, how can you rebuild this temple? It took us years upon years to build this. You think you could do it in 3 days? And John specifically tells us Jesus was speaking about the temple of his body. So Jesus frequently compares himself to the temple. He makes allusions between his own body and the reality of the temple. And then we see at the moment of crucifixion, as John is standing beside the cross of Christ, that as the blood and water flow from the side of Christ, John makes particular note to say, I saw this. I'm not lying. This is something that I witnessed, that I saw with my own two eyes. It's not that strange for blood to come from the side of somebody who's just been pierced by a lance. There's nothing particularly surprising about that. Why the need to really go forth and to say, look, I saw this with my own two eyes? Because of the water. Because John wants us to know that he sees very clearly in the water that came from the side of Christ, the same water that came from the side of the temple. That this water that flowed from the side of the temple, that gives life to everything that it touches, so it is with the waters of Christ. Wherever the waters of Christ flow, there they bring life. There we are. And so all of us have been flooded in the waters of baptism. We've been nearly drowned by the waters of baptism at some point in our lives, many of us as children. And so it is that we come to these waters asking for that divine life to flood upon us anew today and always. Amen.